Western troops are about to enter Ukraine right now. Powerful protection for Ukraine from the US. Europe applauds. The Kremlin trembles. Shock. Putin urgently flew to China. Xi, Kim, and the bunker dweller together at the parade. A secret alliance, a conspiracy, or did they just summon the grey moth for a dressing down? What a twist. Hungary against the EU. An unexpected scandal in the heart of Europe that could end very badly. We'll share the details. A terrible catastrophe for the Russian armies with many casualties. The Ukrainian armed forces trap worked. Russia is suffering crushing defeats on all fronts. Russia's offensive campaign has turned into a disaster. Russia is in shock. Propaganda can't save it. Ukraine's long-range power, the Long Neptune and the Flamingo are setting their own rules of the game. There have already been powerful strikes. The footage is blowing up the internet. Shock. An incredible rout. Ukrainian forces have precisely destroyed a key Russian facility. The fire is visible from space. Sensation? Ukraine did it. The US is sending superweapons. This strike will change everything. All this and more in our program Hotspot. Technology and troops against Putin. The US is preparing a strike coalition for Ukraine. Air defense, intelligence, peacekeeper support, coordination with the European coalition of the willing. And this is just the beginning. Trump is personally overseeing the process.
The United States of America will make its strategic contribution to security guarantees for Ukraine. This was reported to the Financial Times by high-ranking European officials.
Financial Times. The US has promised Europe support for peacekeepers in Ukraine with air cover and intelligence.
It is reported that Washington is ready to support the presence of European allies in Ukraine with intelligence information and protection of Ukrainian airspace.
Europe is planning to provide Ukraine with significant security guarantees, and they have to do it because they are right there. We will be involved as a backup resource. We are going to help them.
It is very important that the US has realized that without guarantees, Ukraine will not agree to implement not just some of Putin's wishes, but won't even sit down at the table to discuss them. Because, well, excuse me, to give up the Donetsk region, not even the occupied cities. For what purpose?
The US's willingness to contribute is a very important signal for Europe. Over the past few months, leaders of European countries have declared their readiness to participate in a peacekeeping mission on the ground and in the air, with the condition of mandatory support from Washington.
Europe must play its part, and I am ready to consider the possibility of deploying British forces on the ground alongside others. But there must be US support, because US security guarantees are the only way to effectively deter Russia from attacking Ukraine again.
At the moment, the discussion is about the White House providing assistance with logistics, command and control of troops, intelligence and surveillance, all the areas in which the potential European continent is most dependent on the US.
In fact, what is being discussed is that the United States has given the green light to European countries for a possible peacekeeping operation scenario on the territory of Ukraine. And let me remind you, more than 10 countries have declared their readiness to provide their own military personnel for a peacekeeping operation on Ukrainian territory.
It is also reported that there will be support with military equipment, particularly air defense systems, which will provide cover for European forces in Ukraine.
The military component will be accompanied by the United States of America. In other words, the mission will be staffed by the US. Well, of course, at the expense of the Europeans. But that's already quite a lot because you have to staff it from somewhere. Where do you get it from if Europe doesn't have enough of its own military production? In order to do this as quickly as possible and to implement those very security guarantees, the United States is essentially the only country available.
In addition, even after the end of hostilities, Washington will provide its own aircraft and ground-based radars, which will help establish an air shield over Ukraine.
This already involves the use of the aviation component, which will nullify the ability of the Russian occupation army to use the aerospace forces of the occupying country when launching missile and bomb strikes both on logistics infrastructure and, accordingly, on peaceful Ukrainian cities.
The issue of reliable security guarantees is key for Ukraine. Without American support, there can be no talk of any reliability at all. In addition to the European peacekeeping contingent, the Russian aggressor will have to reckon with American military equipment, aviation, and intelligence information.
A gathering of dictators. Putin and Kim Jong-un are rushing to see Xi. Trump is in the background. What is behind such haste? World shock, Hungary against the EU. Germany warns Ukraine will not surrender to Putin. Watch all the details right now.
Putin is heading to a place where he definitely won't be arrested. the Kremlin dictator will travel to China for a full 4 days, where an entertainment program awaits him together with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
The meeting between Putin, Xi, and Kim Jong-un is a story of confrontation with the West and the coalition that Kiev has formed around the process of seeking a peaceful resolution or freezing the war. It's no secret. In the West, Russia is now often called a vassal of China, and the continuation of the war is generally considered to be in China's interests. That's why Putin is going to his master, his senior comrade, to seek support, especially against the backdrop of major economic problems.
It will all begin with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit from August 31 to September 1, where leaders of more than 20 countries have been invited. And of course, there will be a grand parade which will take place on September 3rd. During the parade, China plans to demonstrate solidarity with Russia and North Korea.
At this point, the survival of the Russian regime directly depends on both economic support, military cooperation, and the kind of political leverage that China extends to the Russian Federation. It is now abundantly clear that the entire world as a whole has undeniably entered a kind of protracted Cold War 2.0, in which the two primary and most influential superpowers, namely China and the United States, are increasingly confronting each other across various significant and diverse battlefields.
But here's what's interesting. Putin will meet with Xi even before Trump does. Although the US president has stated that he is considering a trip to China itself, which may take place this year or at the beginning of 2026, the purpose of the visit is likely to continue negotiations on a trade agreement.
At this point, it is not advantageous for Xi to meet with Trump. And such a demonstrative refusal to hold this kind of meeting is yet another blow to the foundation of the US as the main geopolitical player and to America's status as the world's policeman. Therefore, I wouldn't jump ahead regarding a personal meeting between Xi and Trump just yet, because it seems that China will sabotage such an initiative from the American president and use it to increase its own geopolitical gains.
Meanwhile, there is clearly a labor shortage in Russia. Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service reports that the Kremlin is recruiting women from poor countries to work at its Shahed assembly plants, and they are doing this through deceitful means.
In South Africa, brick structures were used for recruitment. The Ministry of Women's Affairs has called on young people to remain vigilant. The authorities have launched an investigation into the activities of Russian companies.
Orban is rebelling. Hungary is trying to challenge in court the European Union's decision to use income from frozen Russian assets to finance aid to Ukraine. Back in March 2025, the decision was made bypassing Budapest's opinion.
From a legal standpoint, Hungary can indeed use the argument that the decision was made without their participation, given the legal norms of the European Union. But there is also a political aspect which is more important in this matter. At present, there are indeed quite active discussions taking place in the heart of Europe about reformatting or reforming the decision-making process. It is now obvious to everyone that Hungary and Slovakia are directly playing into Russia's hands.
On the night of August 28th, Russia launched another attack on Kyiv using drones and missiles. There are reports of casualties and fatalities.
We are awaiting China's response to what is happening. China has repeatedly called for the war not to be expanded and for a ceasefire. This is not happening because of Russia. We are awaiting a response from Hungary. The death of children should evoke far stronger emotions than anything else. We expect a response from everyone in the world who has called for peace, but now remains mostly silent instead of taking a principled stand.
But the one who truly understands Russia's intentions is the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz. He stated that Germany does not want Ukraine to capitulate, as that would only give Russia time to prepare for its next act of aggression.
The Kremlin is trapped. Russia's summer offensive has failed. Pokrovsk is holding strong, while the north and south are devouring the occupiers. Putin has lost again. In 3 months, Russia has suffered strategic defeats. The objectives of the offensive have been thwarted. Watch all the explosive details right now.
This video shows soldiers from the 225th Assault Battalion of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. They are clearing the settlement of Voronezh in the Dnipropetrovsk region. With the help of a Bradley, Ukrainian fighters managed to stop the occupiers' breakthrough in this direction. Unfortunately, such actions by the Ukrainian armed forces are not always successful. According to the deep state resource, the Russians have managed for the first time to occupy 2 villages in the Dnipropetrovsk region, Zaporizhzhia and Novy Horivka. In recent months, Putin's invaders have been using infiltration tactics with small groups almost along the entire front line. This tactic yields only very minor successes.
It's infiltration by small infantry groups, just 2 or 3 people at a time. But there are a lot of these groups. Their task is not so much to engage in battle and break through, but rather to bypass our strongholds of resistance, so to speak, right? That is our posts, our strong points, and so on. They take advantage of the fact that the front line is sparse, meaning there is no continuous line of defense. It's not a breakthrough, it's more like infiltration, seeping through, leaking, and so on. This is the kind of tactic they will obviously continue to use. Why? Because in general, the shortage of infantry is unfortunately still quite relevant on our side.
As before, the hottest direction remains Pokrovsky. Every day, at least a quarter of all enemy attacks are concentrated in this direction. The Kremlin wants to capture the entire Donbass at any cost.
They want to reach the administrative borders of Donetsk region, to reach the junction of 3 regions, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Dnipropetrovsk. This is when we're talking about the southern Donetsk direction.
They want to push into the Dnipropetrovsk region in order to seize more territory and have a stronger position in negotiations.
Special attention was also given to the Pokrovsk direction at a meeting with the President of Ukraine, which was attended by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky.
Our main focus right now is primarily on the Pokrovsk, Dobropilya, Novopavlivka, Kupiansk, as well as the Zaporizhzhia directions. During the meeting, they discussed the need for additional support for units in these and other important sectors of the front. There are positive trends in the border areas of Sumy and Kharkiv regions. Here, the decisive factor is the active operations of the 225th Assault Regiment, the 71st Jaeger Brigade, and Special Operations Forces units.
In the coast direction, a series of strikes by Ukrainian aviation managed to destroy an entire unit. The air bombs destroyed the unit's headquarters and command post, the personnel base, the electronic warfare communications crew, and the manpads crew. In this direction, the Russian army has also achieved no success. Most of the objectives that the Kremlin set for the campaign from April to August 2025 have not been achieved. In fact, Russia's summer offensive has failed, and there is a certain fatigue among Russians. This is reported by Bild. Over the entire summer, Russia captured only 1/800 square kilometers. This is about 0.3% of Ukrainian territory.
In the Donetsk region, Russian troops unsuccessfully tried to take Pokrovsk. Despite a breakthrough in the city center in August, within 3 weeks all Russian units were either destroyed or captured. In the northern direction, Vladimir Putin's plans to create a security belt in the Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv regions also failed. Less than 70 kilometers of territory along the border came under Russian control. In the south, in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions, the front remained stable, and the Kremlin was effectively forced to abandon its offensive plans.
The situation at the front is currently stable. President Volodymyr Zelensky is ready to discuss a ceasefire, but not a capitulation as Putin demands.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Ukraine continues to torment the occupiers. The propagandist's hair has turned gray again. For the first time, the new Ukrainian super missile Long Neptune was shown publicly. But let's not forget about the pink bird flamingo, the Ukrainian version of it. The whole world is still discussing this long-range missile. All the details are coming up next.
Ukraine has demonstrated its Long Neptune for the first time. On Independence Day, the state portal Zbroya of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine showed the new Ukrainian missile Long Neptune for the first time, with a range of up to 1,000 kilometers.
We are proud Ukrainians. We have our independence and we possess powerful weapons.
The missile is based on the R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missile, which was used at the time to sink the flagship of the occupiers' Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva.
Moskva, this is the first one. 2 holes. The propeller started to explode. It will roll onto its side, break in half, roll onto its side.
Compared to its anti-ship counterpart, the long-range Neptune has been increased in size and range and is also capable of striking ground targets.
The missile that was shown is longer and has a larger diameter. Well, since, let's say, the naval Neptune has a range of 280 kilometers and here it's 1,000 kilometers, they had to seriously redesign the fuselage. And it should be noted that our engineers took the simplest approach. That is, they simply increased the geometric dimensions of the missile thereby increasing the fuel capacity.
At the same time, a fake story authored by the Kremlin's troll factory leaked into the media. Supposedly, the Trump administration is suspending deliveries of Patriot, HIMARS and Hellfire missiles to Ukraine. The Ukrainian Center for Countering Disinformation assured that there is no suspension of aid. And most importantly, as of today, Ukraine is much less dependent on American missiles.
Why is Trump's blockade of ATACMS no longer as frightening for Ukraine? Washington may have overestimated the impact of American long-range missiles, while Kyiv is strengthening its own defenses.
Ukraine's independence in carrying out long-range strikes on Russian territory is a result of a significant increase in Ukrainian production.
Ukraine has developed and is mass producing at least 2 very long-range, ultra-long-range drones. These are the Luti and the FP1. So the FP1 has a range of 1,600 kilometers, while the Luti drone, when its landing gear was not retractable, originally had a range of about 1,000 kilometers. Now with retractable landing gear and increased fuel capacity, the range is 1,200 kilometers.
The scale of production allows for the daily launch of about 100 long-range drones targeting military and energy facilities on Russian territory. Just in the past few days, Ukrainian drones have successfully struck the Syzran oil refinery in the Samara region.
That's it.
I don't see anything.
Looks like that's all. This is the final one. That's all. That's all.
It definitely hit right, didn't it?
Yes.
As well as the Ust-Luga seaport in the Leningrad region.
Film it, film the group. You can see it flying.
And of course, we can't forget about the Ukrainian Pink Bird, the Flamingo cruise missile, whose appearance has significantly shifted the balance of power in the Russian skies.
And if we use the Flamingo, it can even reach Omsk. There you go. That means all Russian missile factories and 90% of Russian oil refineries, more than 95% of Russian oil refineries, and 90% of enterprises in the Russian military-industrial complex will be within striking range.
The main advantages of the Ukrainian Bird are its simple production, a strike range of up to 3,000 kilometers, and an impressive warhead of 1,150 kilograms.
A hit by a missile, like the Flamingo, right? If a drone hits, it causes some damage. If a missile like that hits with explosives and a warhead of 1,150 kilograms as stated, then we're not talking about damage. We're talking about complete destruction. In that case, there won't be any repairing or looking for spare parts at the refinery, just collecting scrap metal. And if it's an industrial facility like a workshop or something, right? So you just clear the site and build a new workshop, because repairing it, there will be a crater 20 to 25 meters wide.
The fate of Russian refineries, military factories, airfields, and other defense industry facilities now hardly depends on Washington's opinion or position.
The Ukrainian armed forces strike with surgical precision. Refineries in Samara and Krasnodar Krai are ablaze after drone attacks. Explosions were also heard in temporarily occupied Crimea. Shock! Putin's summer offensive has failed. The Western press has declared a catastrophe for the occupiers at the front.
Dozens dead, including 4 children. Putin's terror continues. Russia carried out a massive attack on Ukraine. At night, enemy forces attacked Kiev with drones, ballistic and cruise missiles. The occupiers launched nearly 600 UAVs of various types and 31 missiles. Once again, residential buildings came under terrorist attack. The occupying army also carried out a targeted strike on civilian passenger rolling stock.
Terror against the civilian population is the latest element of military political pressure by the Russian leadership on both the United States and Ukraine, aimed at implementing its own vision of ending the war in Ukraine.
But Russia also had a very loud night. Ukraine's defense forces are striking military targets on Russian territory, in particular the Afipsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai and the Kuibyshev oil refinery in Samara Oblast.
Oh my goodness, it just completely blew up. Oh, it is definitely burning now, and quite intensely.
Explosions also thundered in temporarily occupied Crimea. Online sources reported a raid of about 200 UAVs. In particular, explosions were heard and seen in Sevastopol, Yevpatoria, the area of the Belbek airfield, Saki, and other locations. And also in the Sea of Azov, not far from temporarily occupied Crimea, the Ukrainian armed forces struck a Russian Boyan-M-class small missile ship. As a result of the strikes, the Russian ship, which was in the potential launch zone for Kalibr missiles, sustained damage and was forced to leave its combat duty area. The enemy is also feeling the heat on the front line. Ukrainian kamikaze drones from the Corsair battalion delivered precise strikes on the occupiers' equipment in the Pokrovsky direction. As a result of the attack, a Russian tank and several motorcycles were destroyed. And in the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Ukrainian armed forces engaged in direct small arms combat with the occupiers and eliminated Russian assault troops. Snipers from the 144th Special Operations Forces Center put aside their rifles and, armed with grenades and machine guns, began to repel the assault and clear out the trenches. And overall, Russia's summer offensive in Ukraine has failed, according to the Western press. Most of the objectives that the Russians tried to achieve between April and August 2025 have remained unattainable.
The plans of the Russian political leadership for the summer campaign, not just the summer offensive, as Gill's reports, have indeed completely failed. We are talking about the plans of the Russian political leadership to create so-called buffer zones with an advanced depth of up to 20 kilometers in the Sumy, Kharkiv, and Dnipropetrovsk regions. At this point, Ukraine's defense forces have completely neutralized these threats to the territorial integrity of our country.
Lacking any successes, Russian propagandists are spreading yet another fake about Ukraine allegedly preparing a provocation involving hazardous substances in the combat zone in Donbass.
The goal of this propaganda operation is, first, to discredit the armed forces of Ukraine and the Ukrainian political leadership by attempting to accuse them of violating their international obligations and the agreements ratified accordingly by the Ukrainian parliament. This concerns war crimes and the rules and norms of warfare.
Well, absolutely nothing new or truly humane can be expected from Putin's utterly inhumane actions and his inhumans.
Ukraine's new superpower. The US is supplying the Ukrainian armed forces with super missiles. This is a total blow to the Kremlin. Deadly hybrids of aerial bombs and cruise missiles are already on the way. All the details are coming up in the report.
An American congratulation for Ukraine's Independence Day. Following Keith Kellogg, American cruise missiles will be sent to Ukraine.
It is an honor for me to present you with this award. Thank you.
According to the Wall Street Journal, the Donald Trump administration approved the sale to Ukraine of more than 3,000 extended-range attack munition air-to-surface missiles.
It should be noted that neither the Pentagon nor the White House has officially confirmed the information about the sale of air-to-surface missiles to Ukraine, which, according to media reports, are supposed to be delivered to the Ukrainian side within the next 6 weeks. Therefore, we can say that this is a so-called controlled information leak. That is when the Russian Federation is made aware of the White House administration's plans.
A few days earlier, Russian terrorists launched a missile strike on an American company's factory in western Ukraine. Essentially, Putin nullified Trump's words that the presence of American business on Ukrainian territory is in itself a guarantee of security.
What did you say to Vladimir Putin about yesterday's strike on the American factory in Ukraine?
I told him that I was not happy about it. I'm not happy about anything that's happening in this war.
After some time, the President of the United States made an important statement. Donald Trump admitted that Ukraine cannot win the war by only defending itself.
It's very difficult, if not impossible, to win a war without attacking the aggressor country, just like a great sports team with a fantastic defense wouldn't be allowed to play offense. There's no chance of winning. It's the same with Ukraine and Russia. The dishonest and terribly incompetent Joe Biden didn't allow Ukraine to fight back, only to defend itself. And what came of it?
According to experts, the supply of long-range air-launched missiles is a logical response from Trump to the demonstrated unwillingness of the Russian dictator to negotiate.
The so-called all-over, meaning a retaliatory strike from the United States. Moreover, I do not rule out that together with or in parallel to the possible supply of strike weapons, permission will also be granted to carry out a retaliatory strike on the territory of the Russian Federation.
The key aspect of the supply of American air-to-surface missiles, which, as reported, have been paid for by Ukraine's European allies, is their large quantity, specifically 3,350 missiles, and their range of up to 450 kilometers.
450 kilometers covers virtually the entire rear infrastructure of the Russian occupation army, directly on the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Additionally, if permission is granted to use these weapons on the territory of the Russian Federation, it would cover all of the Russian army's logistics and, accordingly, legitimate military targets within Russian territory. This is significantly, almost by a third, greater than the technical and tactical specifications of the American ATAK-MS.
The combination of the number and range of IRAM missiles means that, unlike the scarce Storm Shadow and ATAK-MS, these missiles can be used much more frequently, including for precision strikes against fighters, bombers, and the launchers of the occupying army.
First and foremost, it appears that air bases will be the primary focus of increased attention from the Ukrainian Defense Forces. In addition, the launch points, that is, the locations from which UAVs as well as cruise and ballistic missiles are launched on the territory of the Russian Federation, will also be targeted.
That's all for now. For more fiery news from the front, tune in to our next episode.